Pogradec is situated in southeastern Albania near the city of Korça on Lake Ohrid, Europe's oldest and deepest lake. The lake has gained recent attention as near to the castle we are talking about today, a team of Albanian and Swiss archaeologists have discovered what might be the oldest settlement in Europe. Submerged near the shore of the lake, they have found a small village estimated to be about 8,500 years old, surrounded by wooden fortifications. Despite being protected, this village was in the valley, and eventually people began to build more defensible fortifications on the hilltops for additional protection. This brings us to the remains of the castle in Pogradec. Friend and fellow YouTuber James Leithart brought me on this somewhat sketchy road to see what remains of the castle. His channel is linked below in the description. A castle that's name has been lost to time. There are no written records for this settlement, leaving us only archaeological evidence to piece together its story. Thus far, excavations have shown that it has been inhabited since at least the 5th century BC, putting it at the end of the Iron Age. Most of the oldest artifacts found are bits of clay vessels like cups and bowls that were made locally on a hand wheel in the pre-urban period. It is believed that this was merely a small Illyrian settlement that did not constitute much in the way of fortifications at the time, with the stone walls to come later. Between the 4th and 1st century BC is when we see the expansion of the settlement and the development of stonework fortifications. Today we can see some scant remains of the castle from this period on the eastern side of the hill. During the wars between the Illyrians and the Romans, and later during the Macedonian and Roman War, the walls were nearly completely destroyed, either during the fighting or to deny defensive structures to the defeated. Excavations carried out in 1971 has revealed plaster and fireplaces that would have been part of the dwellings within the castle fortifications. Ominously, they also discovered vessels with carbonized wheat grains and a layer of ash and carbonized debris indicating that the Illyrian settlement was burned, likely in conjunction with the first raising of the walls by the Romans. The lack of significant building materials suggests that the structures from this period were huts made of birch and covered with mud, with roofs of organic material instead of tiles. The way in which the fragments and debris are distributed led archaeologists to believe that these were small, two-story rectangular buildings. This is not that common in Illyrian towns of the period, but it is believed that the primary residents were participating in agriculture and fishing, and that these humble structures represented the cultural heritage of the community. The remnants of goods from larger Illyrian cities that were imported suggest that this was a town of some importance, and that its rudimentary architecture shouldn't be mistaken as an indicator of low development. Some of the clay vessels found on the site have floral motifs and are colored with pink and blue paste reminiscent of Italian pottery of this period. There are even some purple pigments which are rare. Some of the storage vessels have characteristics that are common in the large Adriatic cities far to the west, like the ancient city of Apollonia. There is even a fragment of a skyphos, a type of drinking vessel, with red figurines that appear to have come from the coastal city of Dyrrhachium, modern-day Durrës. This particular city is famous for its battle between Julius Caesar and the senatorial forces under Pompey and Cato some centuries later, during the Roman Civil War. Also found in the debris from this era are small clay weights that are often decorated with the impressions of fish hooks. These weights would have been used at the bottom of fishing nets, indicating the highly pescatarian nature of the settlement. This is of no surprise, as Lake Ohrid has extremely delicious trout that are endemic to the lake known as Karan, and smaller trout known as belushka, both of which still provide local fishermen with a living here in Pogradec. As far as metal objects go, several fibulae or brooches were discovered. These are used to fasten clothing on the bodies of both men and women. Today these brooches are still common in women's fashion. In addition to the fibulae, bracelets, fish hooks, arrowheads, and a couple of knives were discovered on the site. There were also nails, door frames, and iron brackets for mounting wood beams in construction. There were some terracotta religious objects found relating to the cult of Aphrodite, along with small figurines of animals like a rooster's head. The museum also maintains a handle of a bronze vessel that depicts the head of Pan, an ancient deity associated with shepherds and herders. Several coins from the period were also found that included an Athenian, Alexander the Great, his father Philip of Macedon, and a coin from the aforementioned city of Apollonia. After this period, ending with the burning of the settlement and destruction of the fortification, the site was inhabited, but little remains. The lack of significant findings perhaps testament to the relative poverty that may have occurred after the sacking of the settlement and its defenses. What is more likely, though, is the stability of the Roman state allowed people to settle more in the unfortified valleys where the soil was considerably better and water was readily available. The rich graves found in the village Castenius, where I live, are from this period and support this hypothesis. However, on the hilltop between the 1st century BC and the 3rd century AD, all that survives as evidence of habitation are a couple of Roman coins, a single fibulae, an iron key, a single fishhook, and some culinary earthenware and amphora. During the Roman-Byzantine period between the 4th and 8th centuries AD, we see a strong revival of the settlement with dense habitation and new fortifications that included brickwork indicative of a provincial fortress. The foundations of the tower can be seen here and appears to have been rebuilt at least 3 times between the Illyrian settlement and the final Roman castle. There were 5 graves discovered around the castle in the same area. All but one were of children and were mostly located just outside the castle wall, as was customary because the ancients believed that the souls of the children would help protect the castle. The burials inside the walls may indicate that there was a threat outside the protection of the castle at the time. All the graves were built with late antique ceremonial tiles, indicating that these individuals were cared for. There was considerable earthenware vessels discovered on the site from the period, and much of it was uniform in nature and often decorated with paint. There were also a number of fibulae of different types, a gold-plated earring, bronze figurines, tools, arrowheads, and a massive spearhead. Most of the coins found on the site depict the Emperor Justinian, who ruled from 527 to 565 AD, and is famous for building the great Hagia Sophia in Constantinople, and for reconquering some of the Western Empire. There were also coins from previous and subsequent emperors found. It appears this castle was an important military stronghold, and artifacts found in the modern city of Pogradec along with its surrounding villages strongly suggest somewhat dense population in the vicinity. This is supported by the historian Strabo, who noted there were abundant places around the lake to salt and dry fish. After the 6th century, the fortified settlement appears to have declined. This was a time of crisis in the empire, seeing numerous barbaric invasions. The evidence shows a dwindling amount of pottery, and none of the earthenware that was common in the 9th century was discovered on the site. Only a layer of ash that points to the final end of the settlement on top of the hill. It is likely that during the reign of King Boris of the Bulgars, starting in 852, that the castle was finally torched in his invasion of the area, its walls torn down for the final time, leaving the place in a state of decay for us to discover in the modern era. This concludes the story of the castle at Pogradec. It had an over 1,000-year history, yet it is an enigma without leaving us any literary history or even a name. We can only speculate on what transpired there over the centuries. People grew up there, fell in love, had children. They farmed, fished, and fought. The population saw empires come and go on a long journey before they themselves would eventually dissolve into history, leaving behind a mostly forgotten castle at the top of the hill in Pogradec, Albania. Getting all the resources and information to make a video like this took some help. I would like to thank archaeologist Frosetta Tola at the Museum of Pogradec, as well as the site archaeologist at the castle, Surya Leila, whom were both invaluable resources for this video.